Welcome to another episode of Stack Your Points. As always, I'm Matt Clausen, joined by RJ. RJ, how are you today?
You know what, Matt? I booked a trip today. I booked a trip that if you had asked me a week ago, would you book this trip? I would have said absolutely not. And I got to surprise my parents, which is always a terrifying thing when you're like, hey, I have something to tell you. And they look at you in abject horror, and then you get to surprise them with something good. So it's been a fun day.
Yeah, the last time I said I have something to tell you was not a great conversation. Anyway, we're joined by Lonnie from the Call Me Lonnie YouTube channel. Lonnie, how are you today?
If I was not who I was, that last line, I would just rip you apart on. I would just go in on it. You just opened up the door for me in the real world. But we're not there. We're on YouTube right now. And I'm not that guy.
Ooh.
And I'm doing okay. Today's a good day.
Here in YouTube land, I think and appreciate you. We'll see what happens in the real world. Yee. And we're also joined by Craig or KidCat37. Craig, how are you today?
I am doing all right. I feel more like Vince McMahon than anything because I have Jeff Hardy on contract in my house, a little person that likes to jump off of things. So my life is nothing but abject horror and sleepy days.
Yeah. You'd think they're going to grow out of that phase. They don't always grow out of that phase. I'm in my 30s and very much out of that phase. That's fair. All right, there we go. Let's jump in as we always do with viewer questions. Our first question comes from Kirby G, who asks, how much do you care about hard inquiries when it comes to your credit? And in relation to that, are you okay with applying for a card, even if there is only a 30% chance of you getting it? Will you risk it for the biscuit, quoting Uncle Luke, or not worth the hassle? How much do I care about hard inquiries? I don't. I have a number on my credit report, depending on which credit report it is. My TransUnion right now is super high. My Experian, not as high. My Equifax, who cares about Equifax? In relation to that, are you okay with applying for a card even if there's only a 30% chance of you getting it? I like to have more surety in my percentages, but you don't get to determine whether or not you're getting the card. It's up to the lender. So you try to present yourself as best you can. You try to meet whatever criteria you're aware of in this game, but it's not going to prevent me from applying. If my chance is 10%, if my chance is 30%, if my chance is 100%, I'll click apply. What's the worst that happens? They say no and I get a hard inquiry. Hard inquiries don't matter. And they fall off your report in 2 years. And they stop mattering on your report after a year. So yeah, I'd risk it. But right now there just aren't any cards that I'm chomping at the bit to go apply for. So there's that for me. Greg, your thoughts here?
Similar to yourself, I just do not care. With the exception of a few banks, Citi, somewhat US Bank, it doesn't matter. If there was a higher penalty mark or drop on your credit for hard inquiries, I'd be more concerned. But once your credit profile gets thick enough, it doesn't matter if you've got 2 hard inquiries or 15. The banks will look at you and look at your entire profile and say, does this person need more credit? Probably not. Do I trust this person to pay their bills? Or do I trust this person to at least rack up enough debt and somewhat pay me back? Sure. So for me, doesn't matter.
Totally fair.
I like seeing how high I can get the number. It's fun. It's like a game. I'll apply for anything. I don't care. What's the worst they do? I get a hard inquiry and I get like 4 text messages saying, hey, by the way, your credit profile has been looked at. Okay. Once you
There's
get
been
to
a
a certain,
change to your TransUnion
yeah,
report.
once you get to a certain number, it stops mattering. I can't get lower than poor. Once you hit that poor number of inquiries, there's no further level. It's not like real poor or white trash. There's no final level of hard inquiries. Like I have met that threshold. That is not the deciding factor on if I get a card or not anymore.
When they develop FICO 12, I want white trash to be an option.
I am familiar, so I can help them out in that regard.
That's fair. So it doesn't limit you in any way. And you just apply for cards on a bet and end up with a American Airlines card that you don't expect to use.
It wasn't even a bet. You just
Proud
said
of
that
you.
anybody could get it, so I applied for it to try to prove you wrong. And oh, guess what? Guess what I have now?
Yep. Lonnie, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I actually do care about my hard inquiries. Not to go against the grain of everyone else, but all said no, so I'm going to be the guy that says yes. And that's only because, not to take anything away from what anyone said, they're all correct. They're not going to be that huge of an impact on your credit score. But at the same time, I don't want the perception of I'm consistently looking for more credit, especially at my current stage in life where it might be another large purchase that requires a hard credit hit. I don't want it to, let's just call it a house. Let's use house, for example. I don't want to be like, I'm looking for a house. And then, as you had mentioned, the bank looking at me, but you just also are looking for 15 credit cards. Like, somewhere the math doesn't math from visual perception, and I don't want to have to explain it. So by keeping them low, spreading out your credit card applications, you're okay. Now, granted, credit history is there, longevity is there, payment history and all that other stuff is there. So you can talk to it, but do you really want the conversation, or do you just want the approval? Like, going back to the second part of the question, they're like 30% or whatnot. Do you want to have to call reconsideration, or do you just want to be approved when you hit the blue apply button? I'm the latter, and I'm going to leave it right there.
That's completely fair.
I like the distinction of generations. Lonnie and I are in the same generation, but there are a few years between us of buy a house, or me being like, I'm never going to do that. Oh,
Depends on where
Thanks
you
to
live.
I was about to say, thanks to a lender that we're going to be talking about a little bit more today, I will never be able to buy a house until my parents die.
I feel you,
You're just
bro.
gonna let that one slide. Just move on.
Yep, I was
Wow.
gonna.
Door remains open. All right, let's move to our next question, which comes from friend of the pod and longtime member AP, who asks, Bank of America preferred rewards. Bank of America is not the lender I'm talking about, by the way. Bank of America preferred rewards tier levels have been the same for some time. Is this a sustainable level, or will Bank of America end up revising asset requirements for the tiers? I assume only for new customers. Is Bank of America the best cashback setup in your opinion? If not, which bank generally? Craig, I'll throw to you on this one.
So I think as we look at inflation and we look at just larger aggregate data, those first two levels, silver, gold, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's $0 to $4,900 and then $5,000 to $20,000. I think when you're looking at young professionals, that is a pretty big hurdle to hit for somebody to have 20 grand in a savings account or a checking account. So I don't foresee those changing too much. I also will say, when we look at retirement accounts right now, the average American has far less in a retirement account than you think at the age of 30, 40, and 50. So we're still talking about a pretty affluent population that can have 100,000 to $1 million in a bank account or in a retirement account. It's a smaller number than I think we like to admit because we're such a niche population within the overall arching finance world or finance YouTube. So I can see it purely because in the next 20 or so years, if the dollar continues to devalue, you'll need more in that Roth IRA, or you'll need more in that 403b account. But I believe, based on the numbers that they have, that it's a sustainable model, right? I think US Bank could have learned something from that with the Smartly account, just a smidge. And prior to the recent changes that went out about the altitude reserve and the absolute nuclear bombshell failure of the Smartly card, I would have said US Bank was possibly the best cashback setup that you could have had between the Smartly at 4% and the US Bank at 4.5%. But now that we're talking 3% and the most restrictive possible 4% that you can ask for, I think it still is Bank of America, right? Chase is a weird one where technically it could be cash back. That's, no one's going to look at you and say, Chase is a cashback ecosystem. So I think just purely based off of availability and ease of use and low bar of entry, yeah, I think it's Bank of America that's the best cash back right now because you can get that pure baseline of 2.6% on everything. You can get some 5% categories. And hey, even if we're being realistic about, hey, I may not have 100 grand in a retirement account. If you got 20 to 50 grand, you're still looking at getting 2.4%, I believe it is,
I think it's 2.25.
2.5 on everything. And then with your 5% categories, you're still looking at 4.5%. So I think that there's still value there, even if you're not at that 100,000 mark. And I think it's also interesting that no one at all talks about the diamond level for Bank of America Platinum Honors tier, right? Like we just all assume, in the same way that we assume everybody has 100 grand in the bank, we all assume nobody has $1 million in the bank just because we're not in those same affluent kind of communities. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at for myself.
Now, real quick on that diamond, the distinction between diamond and platinum in terms of your credit card earnings, there is none. It's still the 75%. It's not if you were diamond, you would get 150%, which I think wouldn't be the worst idea, but it has been stagnant for so long because it works. No, that all makes sense. Lonnie, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm not going to have a long answer because I don't pay attention to cashback. Never really have outside of like a Freedom Unlimited or Freedom Flex card. But I have heard good things about Bank of America, and that's about as far as I can go. I don't have any experience with them at all. Yeah, never had a Bank of America anything. Maybe I walk by one of the ATMs in the mall every now and then. That's about as close as I've ever gotten to them. So, as I mentioned, I don't have a lot of experience with cashback, but I've dabbled with educating myself around cashback, if you will, just not around Bank of America. So, I can't say what's the best. I can just say find what's best for you. And when you find what works for you, just keep an open mind up. Something better could be out there. Just don't give up because it works. And that's where I'm going to leave that answer. So, in short, I'm going to bow out.
I am very disappointed in our community because I asked them in the podcast chat the other day what some memes about the show, and I don't think a single one said Lonnie bowing out. So shame on the community. Shame on me for not mentioning that, first off. I think Bank of America knows this program as well as US Bank doesn't know their Smartly program. Like they have this thing dialed in. They know every square, just like an old farmer who knows the back 40, right? He knows where every bump is, where every rock is, where every cow stumbles every spring. Bank of America just knows this program. So I think the tiers, if they go up, I don't necessarily think they would go up a ton, and I don't think they would get a ton of benefit from moving it $5,000 to $10,000. If anything, they're just going to get a bunch of bad press about the fact that they did it. So I can't see them playing with the tiers too strongly over the next year or two. And as far as best cashback, if you're at a higher level, yes, Bank of America is great. If you're not, obviously the king of cashback outside of that is American Express. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. It's Wells Fargo. Like I say that part unironically. Like Wells Fargo is great for cashback if you want to have the autograph.
The autograph journey, 5% cashback on hotels, 4% cashback on flights, 3% cashback on most travel with the autograph, 3% on streaming, 3% on phones, 4% on transit. Anyway, sorry. Bank of America preferred reward tier levels have been the same for some time. They know it works. If they need to readjust anything, they would also very much communicate it out, and it would be because of, I don't know, adding $4.1 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years because you did a thing. Or the dollar massively devalues because reasons. Or the value of your goods shot up about, I don't know, anywhere from 17 to 38% for no reason whatsoever. Yeah. If Bank of America has to change tier levels, it's probably due to factors well beyond Bank of America's control. But they would also communicate it much better than, I don't know, US Bank or most other banks, because they seem to care about their customers, which is nice, except for the times they don't. So I do think that it's more sustainable. I'm sure that they have actuaries who run the numbers, rerun the numbers, and do the things they need to do. If they have to boost requirements, they'll boost requirements, but I don't think that it would be drastic. The most drastic might be platinum honors would go from $100,000 in assets to like $250,000 in assets, which might be a pain for some people, but depending on how they define assets, which is usually pretty broad, if you have the 100,000, you probably end up closer to 200,000 or 250,000, especially if you've got like your mortgage through Bank of America, your car loans through Bank of America, like whatever other equity you can bring in that counts will probably count that you're not aware of. So that can work out pretty well. Is it the best cashback setup in your opinion? Depending on where you are in terms of like platinum, gold, platinum, or diamond level. Platinum and above, there really isn't a cashback setup that beats it, because you get that 2.625 base, and then you throw in the cards with the 3%, the customized cash rewards. You can bump up your travel or whatever other category quarterly on $10,000 a year up to 5.25. And you can collect those cards like Pokemon as well. I don't love it, but you do you. And they have higher quarterly caps than, I don't know, the City Custom Cash or the Chase Freedom cards, the Freedom Unlimited, the Freedom Flex with Ultimate Rewards. So yeah, I think Bank of America for a certain subset of people is the best cashback setup for sure. After that, Wells is up there, then City's up there, and then probably Chase, I think would be a fair enough estimate. And then if you've got the business checking account, the business platinum, or a Schwab account, then Amex somehow gets into that mix, but they're not really in that game. If they chose to be in that game, they could play that game pretty well, but Amex very definitely doesn't want to play that game.
Don't sleep on the Blue Cash Preferred. It's a great card.
It would be an even better card if you could take that money and not have to apply it to your statements.
I don't disagree.
That's fair. All right, so thanks, AP. We're going to move over to our next question from Spathco, who asks, can you think of another year where cards have raised fees while slashing benefits to the same degree as we're seeing now in 2025? Have we reached peak credit card? Lonnie, I'll throw to you.
I knew you were going to throw it to me on this one. Huh.
There's a pattern so far.
Yeah, I can tell. No. I think the slashing of benefits and the raise fees, both independently, not even related or bucketed in the same space, independently has never been as he put it, to the degree as we're seeing in 2025. I'm trying to even think of just like when benefits got lost. Like, I can't really think of anything that was as heavy as they are that we're currently seeing. And then on top, the raising the annual fees. Now that's just the lemming fiasco. We let one card get away with it, and then another card got away with it, and then nobody complained and nobody said anything, and then another card got away with it, and then it's like, yo, let's just keep doing it. And we as consumers, not credit card community, not stack your points community, but we as consumers allowed it to happen. Going back to the original question of, hey, we just raised the annual fee and then we got more card holders. If a big company like an Amex does that, and they did, and they get away with it over and over again, then other people are going to duplicate that business model as well. You're just going to steal it. And then that's where we're at now, where it's just now we can just raise the annual fee. But these all have peaks and valleys and whatnot. Eventually, I think we as consumers are also going to be like, man, F that, I'm out. And we're going to start canceling as consumers, or we're going to stop applying, or a combination of both. Like, even those that are not as savvy in the credit card community as we are in this community, Your average Joe or one of RJ's relatives that she always likes to bring up that is completely not part of this community, they're going to be like, I'm not going to pay that. You know what I mean? Like, even like, it wasn't even like a year ago, or even go back 2 years where we would see a 550 annual fee plus $500. And people were like, I'm not paying that. I used to say it for the Amex Platinum and Outlook. It's one of my, at least one of my most powerful cards that I have until this fall. And we'll see what happens. But even I was like, I'm not paying $695 for it. And then I went and got it. I'm like, all right, I see why this is worth $695. But even I used to be in that other bucket. I'm like, I ain't paying that. And I think we're officially at a point where it's not just satire of I'm not paying that. No, it's reality of, man, eggs cost $12. That's $1 an egg. I'm not paying that Amex. I'm not paying that Chase. I'm not going to pay. So I think we're actually at that point now where they're officially too high. But then by adding in these benefits don't make any sense to me, or the credits or the coupons, which I have to use or that come with it, just don't make any sense to me. If that math doesn't math, I'm going to be stuck paying a $700 annual fee card, and I'm only going to get a $300 travel credit, talking about CSR, of course. Mm-hmm. That math does not math. And I think a lot of people are going to fall into those particular buckets more and more as these credit card companies continue to recycle the same old business model. Raise the annual fee, give them more credits. We're running out of places to use the credits. Like, I don't need all these credits. We didn't need all these credits to start with before 2025. Now you're just giving us random stuff. Give us something that we can absolutely use. That would absolutely make sense. We've talked about that before on previous episodes. Not just something random because someone picked up the phone or responded to an email. Hey, we want to do a joint marketing agreement with each other. So, no, I don't think there's going to be another year of this. I think we're literally at the top of the roller coaster right now, and here comes the drop. And then things are going to get better in 2026, maybe even 2027 before they're like, all right, wait a sec, this is valuable again. And we're going to start seeing, I reapplied for the Amex Gold. I reapplied for the Chase Sapphire Reserve. I think that's when we're going to see it. I guess RJ needs to make another clip of Was Lonnie Right? I just did it to myself, but that's how I personally feel. But completely independently, the benefits and annual fees are bad enough in their own independent categories, but together, it's really, really bad. It's the worst I've seen.
So I'm going to say the word that might get this video lower down in the algorithm. 5 years ago, we had COVID. And credit card companies tried to do a lot of creative things because people weren't traveling. They weren't using credit cards the same way. All of our behaviors changed. Whether you were an essential worker, whether you were working from home, whether you were unemployed, all of our behaviors changed. And that fundamentally reset how the credit card market worked because it had to. These banks did not want to lose vast amounts of money by people not signing up for credit cards. And I think a lot of what we see now is the after effects of what happened during COVID. Things like the Platinum having Walmart Plus with delivery, because that was a huge benefit when you couldn't leave your house. I'm not saying that Walmart Plus was put on the Platinum because of COVID, but what I am saying is that a lot of things changed. The companies had to get creative in a way that they didn't necessarily want to, but then realized how well it could work. I think because the signups, like Lonnie said, annual fee goes up, more people sign up for card. Like, it's almost like AI. If you put bad data in a large language model or an AI chat, it's going to just give you bad data. So if we're signing up for things when they bump the annual fee up, what are we teaching them? If you raise the annual fee, we're going to sign up. Like, it's not their fault that we're signing up for cards with higher annual fees after they raise the annual fee. That's not Bank of America or Amex's or Chase's or anybody else's fault. That's us. We signed up for the damn card once it went up $200. Now, sometimes it's because that card now very much does work for your life. And I'm not blaming an individual, but I am saying that I think the credit card industry is set for a reset because of that global event that changed everything. That we all like to pretend didn't happen and we're not living through the after effects of it. So I think right now we're seeing how those effects play out in a long COVID like event, right? We're seeing how these banks now have to untangle themselves from some of those decisions that they made. And some are doubling down, some are getting funky with credits because the data we've given them is bad. We've given them, if I put coupons on this card, people are signing up. If I raise the annual fee, people are signing up. So I do think, like Lonnie, give it to 27, maybe 28 or 29, but by 2030, I think things are going to be fundamentally different because I think we're past the effects enough where things can go back to a different path or they can move to a different path. But we're never going to go back to like it was. Like you can't, to quote Pocahontas, you can't step into the same stream twice. We cannot go back to 2018 or 2019 in credit cards. We can't. We are not those people anymore. So I think that's ultimately why we're seeing what we're seeing now. People just don't want to talk about it because it's not a topic that anybody wants to chat about anymore. We have all chatted our last chats about this particular world event.
That's certainly fair. And that probably plays a much bigger role than any of us are willing to let on. In thinking about this, can I think of another year where cards raised fees while slashing benefits to the same degree? We didn't live in as much of an annual fee world in 2007, 2008, but a lot of cards that were previously popular in leading up to 2007, 2008, those went away for reasons. I have lived through a recession that was really a Great Depression that they wouldn't call a Great Depression for reasons. Another recession after a huge global pandemic, a recession that again they wouldn't want to call a recession because reasons. Huge financial events have occurred in my lifetime. Like I am sure that 2007, 2008 was as much of a reckoning, especially because you didn't have annual fee cards to really like slash benefits, but cards that were like 5x on this certain category were no longer sustainable because spending habits changed in light of the Great Recession. And those didn't start coming back until what, 2018, 2019, right before everything went up in smoke again. So these are very definitely cycles. One card I can think of would be like the City Forward card. That had a 5x unlimited bookstore category, which Amazon counted as a bookstore category. Still does for one particular Wells Fargo card at 4%. You weren't that when that card got retired, it was because it was no longer sustainable for Citi. Now, Citi tried to get with the dividend card. The dividend card was capped at the 5% at or the 5x thank you points on $6,000 in spend a year. The Chase Freedom Flex, when it was launched, it was capped at $6,000 in spend per year. It's just broken down category quarterly, and they have the rotating categories. So you're not always going to spend that 6,000 because there's one quarter that's really good, there's a second quarter that sort of works, and then there's two quarters that probably don't work for your full 1,500 in spend, and that's intentional from Chase. You've got the City Custom Cash, a card that everybody loves for whatever reason. It's capped at $3,000 a year. It's $500 a month. And you don't get to spend that $3,000 all at once. You have to max out the 500 every single month to get full value out of the card, or you just collect a what is it? A baseball card binder full of them. That's the other way to extract as much value as you can. I digress. Have we seen another year where we've seen raised fees while slashing benefits? No, but that's just because of where we've come from over the last couple of years, where you saw benefits slashed and you saw cards fundamentally change and banks fundamentally have to tighten the way that they handled things with credit cards in the wake of the Great Recession. We're sort of seeing the same thing now, but it's more expensive to do business and it's going to cost them more money to present the same sort of value proposition with transferable currencies. Because as the price of everything goes up, the price of the miles that you buy with your points also goes up. We're not seeing the effects of that in terms of devaluations of miles generally, but it is more expensive to buy that mile with that penny because it's going to be, 1.5, 1.6 cents per point to make that purchase on the front end from the bank. So it is going to cost them more and they will pass over that cost to you. So we haven't seen a year like this in 2025, but we have seen years that have been as detrimental to the credit card game previously. 2007, 2008 would come to mind. Have we reached peak credit card? No, we've just hit this portion of the roller coaster. It just oscillates all the time. It'll drop and then it'll start climbing back up, and then we'll hit peak credit card again, probably 2034, 2036, 2037, and then it'll drop again. It'll pick back up with another peak in the 2040s. There really wasn't much of a peak in the 2010s because we were living through the effects of the Great Recession and having to. Greece didn't make money for how many years of that decade? Like almost all of it. A lot of countries were cash poor through most of the 2010s. A lot of those countries are only now cash rich because of the fact that they had to keep their money in their country for a year and a half because of a thing that we're trying not to talk about and trying to forget about or blank out of existence. That just very definitely happened. Anyway, I can go on and on. Craig, your thoughts here.
So I'm going to be the fish swimming upstream in this one. I don't think card benefits have necessarily gotten worse. And
No.
I think as we're talking about the raising of annual fees, I don't think that the banks have raised annual fees to a point that they have outpaced their benefits. I think they've raised annual fees to a point that they outpace you having every single ecosystem that you want to have to build out your
Dream
super
wallet.
ultra luxury setup, right? I've gone on record several times in saying I don't care if the platinum card is $1,000 because I want to have people out of the lounge. But in the same sense, there, I wasn't expecting the CSR. To be honest, I wasn't ever expecting to have the CSR because I didn't see any value in it. Sorry, Lonnie. But then they opened up the world's greatest lounge in Philadelphia, which, we're being honest, is a low bar. But now I see value in the CSR. And me and Space Co were having this little friendly back and forth in the Discord to say, God, looking at all these credits makes my head spin and makes me sick. I'm being honest, they fit my lifestyle better than the platinum in its current form right now. The only difference that's making me think, do I need the platinum or do I need the CSR, is what is the platinum going to do in October? And I think it's a misnomer to say that we are outpacing benefits. Yes, we are seeing benefits change, but I think that is indicative of people having different spending habits. A card that people love has been a credit card darling for those of us that are deeper into the cash back world, which is the US Bank Altitude Reserve. We're seeing it lose that 1.5 on extra travel boost. And, I mean, is that great? No. But if you're somebody that says, hey, I only spend money using mobile wallet, I still think that's a win for you. If you are in San Francisco or if you live in New York or Chicago, and let's say 90% of your spend is on mobile wallet, that's still a 3x everything card. Despite it being not 4.5%, even if they have a list of transfer partners that's aligned with Wells Fargo, you're still getting 3x everything, right? Like, I don't think that's a bad usage. And let's be honest here, people, banks aren't your friends. I'm more surprised that it took so long for us to move credits into their own internal portals than not. Our wonderful co-host Lonnie just made a video. Are we moving towards the travel portal apocalypse, right? Or only using travel portals? I haven't had the worst experience, but then again, the only travel portals I use are for hotel nights. Worst case scenario, I can show you my confirmation number. You tell me, hey, that's not here. Depending on where I go, I'm still going to get a room, right? So I think we are upset that change is happening. We are creatures of habit. No one likes to see change, but I don't think that it's the best viewpoint to say that we're losing benefits. Benefits are changing. Benefits are becoming more hyper specific because we have more hyper specific spending data and information. Even in just outside of the finance world, we have more knowledge about you as an individual than we have ever had at any point in history. And I can say, hey, you may not spend this way, particularly for you, but people in your age demographic, people in your area, people that have roughly the same amount of affluent background or income do. I don't need to have $300 on StubHub or Open Cable or all these other things, but they fit into my normal spending habits. Even if I'm only doing it 2 or 3 times a year, that's still a 2 or 3 time a year discount for me. Is it a few extra hoops that I have to jump through? Sure, but there's still value to be had there. It's just not value for you. And when we're talking about the platinum being possibly $1,000 and the sapphire reserve being $800, I think we're at the point where you have to pick. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Totally fair. Thanks, Craig. There, thanks, Spathco, for that question. We'll jump to our next question. Comes from Keith. Only one Keith question today. Interesting. Keith asks, does refresh in bank speak translate to nerf in everyday language? Craig, I'll jump back to you on this one, although I don't think it will, based on your previous answer.
But again, does it fit your lifestyle? Here's the thing. I'm not traveling 70 nights a year or more or taking 40 or 50 flights. But for example, Hyatt being a transfer partner to Chase has meant absolutely diddly to me. Out of the 200 plus nights I've spent in the last 2 years for work traveling, I've stayed at maybe Hyatt 12 times. So if Chase were to lose Hyatt, oh, okay, that sucks. I'd laugh a little bit because me and RJ would find it hilarious. It's not an end all be all for me. Now, would that be a devaluation in the credit card community that would send us all spiraling into an apocalypse? Absolutely. But I think it falls back to what's your lifestyle. So I don't necessarily think it means nerf. I think it means it's probably going to get more expensive. I think it would be irresponsible for me to say that refresh doesn't mean more money, but I don't think it necessarily means bad.
No, that's fair. Definitely hear that. Lonnie, your thoughts here?
No, I don't think a refresh necessarily means a nerf. There's been a couple of refreshes in the since 2024. I'll even add the last year in there that have actually come out ahead in terms of like benefits and things like that. I personally think the Amex Gold Card refresh worked out in most of our favors. It took a while to see it because we were so adverse to refresh, new higher annual fee, burn, is dead, it's over, it's killed, keeper canceled, die. And then later on, we're like, wait a sec, this is actually still pretty good. It's actually got a little bit better. And I've mentioned this before. I don't even use 100% of the credits that come through there, like my Resi credit. And I still kept it because it still works. It actually works a little bit more now. But I think we're going back to Spathco's question that we just left. I think we're getting to a point where refresh is just, let's just throw a whole bunch of stuff in the pot and see how it tastes later. We're calling that a nerf because before refresh like added value, added benefit. Like I remember going back to the CSR. I remember when it was 450 and then it went up to 5. That was a refresh and it got better with it. The jury's still out on this next refresh. I'll say I'm going to stand strong on my stance. I'm not going to give it a yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down until I get all the benefits. But at least the last time they did it, yeah, it worked. Like I mentioned, I have the United cards. Guess what? They refreshed them. It actually made them better. It actually made it easier for people to open up and get into those United ecosystem, no matter which card you pick, as long as it wasn't the gateway. Don't get the gateway. But get any of the other colored ones and you're just fine. It actually made it better if you already had one. So I won't just go ahead and put a flat across the line refresh equals nerf, but I do understand the question of these most recent refreshes could equal nerf.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag across the board. Some have been not great, others better than expected. RJ, your thoughts here?
What's the old line about baseball? You win a third of the games, you lose a third of the games, and then a third of the games is where the season actually matters. That's how it works for refreshes. A third of the people are going to hate it, a third of the people are going to love it, and it's really that final third of people that decide if it's a successful refresh. I think we are so programmed to see things in black and white and extremes, or see it as this card isn't for me, I must hate it. If tomorrow, I'm trying to think of a company, I don't have any non-co-brand Wells Fargo cards, right? If tomorrow Wells Fargo completely changed their entire lineup, they updated the journey and the autograph, they launched 6 new cards and took the biggest swing in the world, right? Some people would love that. Matt would have to call off of work and make 47 videos in 24 hours. Like it'd be a lot for him. But some people would love it. Some people would hate it on principle because reasons. And then some people would take a week or two to figure out how they feel about it and then come down on one side or the other. And it's like we're so programmed to look at a thing and instantly make that judgment. We're so programmed to look at it and go, oh, the annual fee went up on the gold and I don't like that, so I'm going to cancel this card. But I'm not actually going to cancel this card. I'm just going to make a video saying I canceled this card so I can get the money from that to offset the annual fee that just went up. Like, we're so programmed to, like, and look, this is a little bit of inside baseball, but like people who do YouTube know the analytics. Like, I do a lot to both lean into and out of the algorithm with this show. Like, I do not use clickbait titles mostly for our show. I could, we might get more views, but then I would not be able to look at myself in the mirror every day because I don't like the clickbait. So, like, YouTubers know those analytics though. They can lean into them if they want. And I think how YouTube frames credit cards impacts the people who are super into credit cards, which feeds out to the people who are moderately into credit cards, which feeds out to the people who are not really into credit cards, which feeds out to the random person on TikTok that like got a random YouTuber's like cut up video of like why the gold card is Satan now. So it filters out from those people who are just trying to get clicks on a video by talking about how terrible the gold is. But yeah, do I think the easiest cards to change fundamentally are the cards with the most on them, which probably means the highest annual? Yes, which is why we're seeing them. Nobody's going to have a heart attack if the blue cash every day gets completely changed. For better or worse, nobody will care. I'll make a joke about Amex and cashback, and that's about all that you will see on that card, except for Matt's video where he explains it all because he is Mr. Newsman. I think we have gotten to the point where there's just so much algorithm that filters out that we're not actually thinking critically anymore.
I'll tell you this much. I'll get beat to publication on that Blue Cash Everyday video about how the new Blue Cash Everyday, it changes everything. Anyway, does refresh and bang speak translate to nerf in everyday English? Really just depends. It's going to depend on your relationship to the card that gets changed. If you are a Sapphire Reserve holder who's feeling burned by the changes to the Sapphire Reserve, yes, refresh equals nerf in your mind. Now, I'm still reserving judgment, not until October. The Sapphire Reserve refresh is part of a grander scale of refreshes across the Chase personal lineup. Like, the Sapphire Preferred is going to get refreshed. The Chase Freedom cards are going to get refreshed. It's entirely possible that that family of cards have had their refreshes written out, but Chase is going to wait until after the second week of September to announce them, because in the second week of September, they may also be getting the Apple card. We don't know yet, but there is more to that story than just the Sapphire Reserve. So we have to see what's going to happen from there. The Hilton cards, when the Hilton cards were refreshed, yes, it sucked that you lost Priority Pass, but you got really easy to use credits on the Hilton Business, on the Hilton Surpass, and on the Hilton Aspire, all of which outpace the annual fee of those cards and are really simple to use, especially in the Hilton Honors and Hilton Surpass, where literally the easiest way to activate those credits, go to a Hilton 4 times a year. If you can spend 4 nights at a hotel every year and you've signed up for a Hilton card, go to a Hilton 4 times a year. You get your $50 credit or your $60 credit on the Business. The Aspire, it's a little bit different, but the credits on that are still relatively easy to hit. So those cards got better. The Delta cards, you can argue, got better. The Gold card, we look at the Gold card refresh now in light of what happened with the Sapphire Reserve, in light of some argue, like for Lonnie, the United cards got better. For others, the United cards got worse. So with the Chase changes this year, now folks are looking back longingly at the Gold card refresh because, oh, it was $84 in Duncan. That wasn't so bad. And $100 on Resi. That wasn't so bad. Yeah, it was split $50 each half of the year, but I can make it work. So does refresh in bank speak translate to nerf? No. Nerf is your interpretation of the card that you're holding that got refreshed. And in terms of the Sapphire Reserve, I think there's more coming. There has to be more coming because that change was far too drastic to just be one card and everything else remains the same. There is a much bigger play being done with Chase. We just have to, unfortunately, let them cook, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year. Do I expect big things from Chase? No. Is it possible that Chase comes out with a really well-functioning ecosystem that's finally coherent and doesn't make your brain want to just turn into mush? Maybe. How likely that is, I don't know, but I'm willing to give them a chance. Wells Fargo is still cooking. Capital One's going to be refreshing the Venture X probably next year. If cards are on a 4 to 5 year cycle, next year is 5 years from launch. Venture X folks, be prepared. They got rid of the $95 Saver card and just renamed the Saver One Saver. So like they changed that aspect of the lineup. There's still a rumored updated potential Saver card coming out. So everybody's going to be doing changes to their cards. US Bank is adding transfer partners. Yes, everybody's worried about what the Altitude Reserve looks like, and everybody's, as long as they beat Wells Fargo with transfer partners, it's probably going to be okay, but losing by 1.5 in the travel portal is really sucky. What if they give you like 1.5 pay yourself back in some category that nobody else does? And then suddenly it's something that everybody works off of. You could pay yourself back for dining at 1.5. Pay yourself back for dining at 1.75. Pay yourself back on your utilities at 2 cents per point. US Bank comes up with some zany ideas. Maybe they come up with something that makes the US Bank Altitude Reserve better. Not saying they will, but they could.
7 months it will live before they kill it like a wounded water buffalo.
7 months is generous.
I was giving them a little bit of hope. It's football season. They're going to be watching that.
Oh,
they're going to be the Steelers. You know it's going to be about 6 months before something bad happens. Or, you know, the people who break things. Still can't believe Smartly didn't even last 6 months. But does refresh equal nerf? No. Your interpretation of nerf is heavily dependent upon what cards you're using. And Keith, not to beat this horse, I'm sorry, I have to take a swing at the horse on the ground. We don't know what's happening with your favorite four-letter company come October or come the fall. Those changes are going to probably be rough, but we'll see. So no, I don't think refresh translates to nerf. I think nerf is in the eye of the beholder, but the Sapphire Reserve changes were so drastic and everybody is taking them so personally, and then add in the changes to the US Bank Altitude Reserve that have been announced so far, which we don't have the full story there, and the Smartly debacle, everybody interprets refresh to be nerf. But there have been other cards that have had updates and gotten better. And we don't know what the MX Green is going to look like in the fall. We don't know what the MX Platinum is going to look like in the fall. One of those cards is probably going to be really, really good. The other one's probably going to make you question your sanity. But thanks, Keith. We'll move on to our last question. It comes from Double Animal Fries, who asks, folks often say build your credit card strategy around your existing travel habits. My experience has been more of a two-way street, as credit card rewards have enabled experiences I otherwise wouldn't have if I was just paying cash. So my travel habits are no longer what they were. How has your travel evolved or not since getting into credit cards, points and miles? We'll do a jump ball for this one, and I will go to RJ first.
So I don't necessarily think you should build it around your existing travel strategy. I do think you should build it around a reasonable travel strategy for you. And what I mean is if you're making 50,000 a year in a higher cost area, like being like, I'm gonna just stay at the Ritz-Carlton every time I travel, probably not realistic. Probably not. Just saying. Maybe you got a ton of work travel and can pull off points and do things, but probably not the most realistic. So being like, I want to stay at 3 stars and above, I want certain amenities when I travel. That can be reasonable, right? Like you can have certain standards that you want. All four of us have different incomes. We live in different parts of the country and we all have different standards, but we all have consistent standards for what we will stay at and what we won't. So I think figuring out what you want that standard to be that is reasonable and going more towards that direction. And as you mature in the credit card game, as you mature in just being more experienced at traveling, you can augment that, right? Like, I really thought Choice was going to work. And Choice is not a bad ecosystem. Like, it's a great credit card. The Choice Select is a great credit card. But for me, Hilton and IHG just became much easier for me to use the way that I travel. So for me, that was an augmentation, but I knew what standard I wanted, and then I figured out how to consistently have that. And I think that is more what people actually are talking about when they say build your credit card strategy around your travel habits is not necessarily your existing habits, but what standard you want when you travel. And then you're going to have one-offs, right? You're going to go to a place you've never been and you do want the Ritz-Carlton because it's your anniversary and you've been married for 10 years and your spouse has put up with you labeling credit cards in their wallet and they haven't smothered you with a pillow. You're going to go out a little bit. So you have those moments where you can go above that, but really it is very rare once you get to that place, you're going to go below it. Unless it's a family emergency, unless it's we thought we could do a road trip for 9 hours of driving and we can only do 6, and there is only this Howard Johnson on the side of the road. And I'm not even going to look at the reviews. I'm just going to pray that the bed bugs are kind to me tonight. You get to that moment, right? But I think going to where you want to be at a reasonable level for income, location, all of that makes sense. I am not going to get Delta lie flat every time I fly. I physically cannot. They cannot fit the size of the planes in my regional airport consistently. Can't have it. I don't fly cross country often enough to where I would have it anyway, even if I was flying out of LaGuardia or JFK all the time. So that standard isn't reasonable for me. First class for me as a person in my mid 30s, heading towards my late 30s, that is a reasonable thing for me. That is something I am willing to pay for, and I pay for it. So that is where I think people need to work towards. Find your standard, move to the standard, figure out as you're moving towards that standard, maybe this isn't the actual standard I want, and then adjust accordingly.
That certainly makes sense. Craig.
So similar to RJ, I am of the mindset that you build your setup to where you want to be, not where you are. But also, I think being realistic with that is also super important. For example, somebody that wants to go and do more travel, I'm not going to tell you go get the platinum, right? That is just not a great idea when you're telling me like, hey, yeah, I'm doing the credit cards. I just want to dip my toe because me and my partner want to go to Los Angeles for a weekend a year. You don't need a platinum for that. But what I will say is, I think credit cards are an exploratory tool. Fun fact, I don't particularly care for wine. I don't really drink much, but just got back from a trip in Napa, California, right? That was really cool. I can tell you, Cab or Cabernet Sauvignons, terrible. They taste like dirt. They're disgusting. Do not recommend. But I understand why people do it. It's a fancy, fun experience. But I think, it is okay to be aspirational in what you want to do in realistic terms within your life, right? Talking about how travel changes, I'm super duper heavy into credit cards. I may not be a min maxer despite RJ's best efforts to get me to liquidate a $20 credit using $8.37.
Yeah, that's how that conversation went, sir. Whatever you want to believe to look at yourself in the mirror.
I need all the copium. I don't have work travel, right? And the reason I was so heavily into these luxury cards was for work travel. I really don't need 3 cards that are going to give me lounge access now. So the Platinum, the Venture X, and the CSR are all on the chopping block, and whoever makes the best case is the one that gets to stick around. I'll keep my hotel cards because at this point, I'm probably not going to be traveling enough to actually earn high hotel status. And that's something that's important to me. I'm going to spend more time in a hotel than I am going to be on a plane. I think it's important to be realistic with yourself, but also realistic in the travel that you want to have. Because oftentimes we're so caught up. And again, let's say we are a niche and a niche and a niche, right? The next level down from us is true grifters where you're getting into buying and selling clubs and you're trying to tell people, yeah, if you use this much margin, you can make this many points. And you're talking about an extra 4,000 points a year so you can buy gift cards. And it's just not great. But yeah, be realistic with yourself because everybody's in a different point in life. I live in a low cost part of the country. It's great, right? Like it is truly like nice to have the income to be able to live life. But also living life doesn't mean that I need to be in a platinum Centurion lounge or a Delta Sky Club, excuse me. So I think it's important, but also realistic because if you're not, that's how we end up with $1 trillion in credit card debt. Now, granted, I also want to give the caveat to say some people are just out there trying to survive, and that is if it's the difference between eating and paying a credit card bill, I'm going to eat every single time, especially if it's for a survival situation. But if it's between, oh, I need to pay $795 for a credit card so I can possibly use a lounge 3 times a year or not, look at yourself and say, what is the necessity? So that's it for me.
Totally fair. Lonnie?
There we go. So I got to take the former approach versus the latter approach of I was traveling before I got into credit cards. So for me, credit cards was the enhancement where I realized I could be doing or getting so much more if I had credit cards. And I've mentioned this in many of my videos. I mentioned it here that my United Explorer card was the first travel card that I've ever gotten. And it was after I was already flying on United a lot. already getting those miles. And I'm like, wait a sec, man. Why is it I'm always like in group 3? Or why is it that I'm always at the bottom of the upgrade list? Like, and then I realized like having the card brought in those experiences where now you're group 2, now you're group 1, now you're pre-boarding. Now you're not number 10 on the upgrade list or 15 on the upgrade list. Now you're number 8. Now you're number 5. Wait a sec. Now you're number 2. And then it was, you got upgraded. I'm like, wait, I don't fly till tomorrow. And now I'm at, hey, you got upgraded. And I'm like, my flight's not for 5 days type of scenario. And so after that's when I got deeper into credit cards, because actually, believe it or not, right after that, the next card that I got was my CSR. That's why I've had it for so long. And I was actually skeptical about it because I'm like, as I mentioned earlier, man, that's a $450 annual fee. I don't want to pay $450 for it. They also give me 100,000 UR points. And I'm like, look, if this thing fails, at least I can transfer all 100,000 of these points out to United or cash them out for $1,000 and be done with it. So I was like, I got a really good safety net here. But it was until after having that card where once again, I'm like, now I got this perk, or now I got that perk, or now I'm earning points here and I'm earning points there. I'm getting discounts on Lyft. I'm getting all these other things where I'm like, yeah, these are actually an enhancement to my experiences. And that's why I always say that they are an enhancement to an experience, not just, they can also be a tool or a resource, depending on perspective, Craig had mentioned. But I won't necessarily say it changed my travel habits. It made me more bougie with my travel habits. I don't book a studio room expecting it when I check in to get a studio room. I'm that bougie of a person where I'm like, hey, I'm here. Where's my upgrade? What do you mean I'm only getting what I paid for? Like, I booked the cheap room so I didn't have to stay in it. I'm literally that guy now where I'm so used to it that I almost feel entitled because of my credit cards and the experiences and the loyalty and everything. So there's rhyme to the reason, a method to the madness. But I say all that because I'm not going to necessarily say that the credit cards changed my travel habits. I didn't change because of the cards. My travel experiences changed because of the cards, and I've came accustomed to those and to continue enhancing those. And brand new, like literally 12 months in on hotel cards, and I already have 3 of them where I'm like, I already had the hotels that I wanted. I already had the hotel experiences that I wanted. But going back to like the status with United, I didn't have the status. I don't stay, even with work travel, I don't stay enough in hotels where make an impact on me getting status whatsoever. And so by having the cards, now I have status, and now those enhancements come into play. That plus a lot of loyalty, of course, because people are very loyal to those that are loyal to them. So do I got to say it, RJ? Can we just put it like on screen to say, pick your partners? Just pick your partners, y'all. Just makes everything so easy. Just pick some partners. How has my travel evolved or not since getting into credit cards and points and miles? Like I said, I just became more bougie. I became more comfortable. I'm not going to go say I hit full Karen mode, but have I become slightly entitled? Yeah. United, if I'm a 1K member, I bet you better treat me like a 1K member. I would say that's a level of entitlement. Even though I might not stay 40 nights at Marriott, look, I'm a platinum member. Hey, I might not stay 40 nights at a Hilton. Hey, I'm a diamond member. So treat me like a diamond member. So there is a small, at the bottom of the barrel level of entitlement. I'm going to admit to that. But at the same time, like I said, I like a room with her, and RJ knows that. And these have enhanced me being able to get into those types of room and establishment and sitting closer to the front of the bus.
No, that definitely makes sense. For me, my travel habits, I wouldn't say that they have significantly changed, but there are things that I do now because of points and miles. I'm more willing to do rideshare because I get more points out of rideshare, and willing to rideshare around cities that I don't know. Because if you don't know the traffic patterns in New Orleans, Louisiana, it's probably not a good idea to be driving that after taking a flight first thing in the morning. Probably not the best idea. I've added in rideshare. I will also rent from time to time, which I was doing before, but yeah, I now will start my bookings with points, and then if I want to upgrade, now it's cheaper for me to upgrade and not have to worry about paying full freight for sitting at the front of the plane, as opposed to having to pay the full $600-700 based on where before I had to where I'd started $600 or $700. Now I could book for 10-15,000 points and then pay for an upgrade. And that upgrade is what on JetBlue anywhere from like $40 to $100, depending on what flight I'm taking, what time of day I'm taking that flight, because it's all dynamic with JetBlue. But other airlines would probably have a more static approach to it, where I redeem points for not terrible seat, but I can then pay to move up to a better seat. So that aspect of things has evolved for me, where I'm now thinking about how I can improve my travel day. Before getting into credit cards, like I'd never really considered a lounge or a space away from the airport. It was always, I'm stuck with this overpriced food from this vendor, looking around, what are my best options? There's really overpriced Starbucks. There's a really overpriced Philly cheesesteak place. There's super overpriced McDonald's. But now, with a lounge, should a lounge be available to me and I have the ability to go into the lounge before my flight, I can go in, I can grab a couple of things before my flight and not have to worry about paying the exorbitant fee that is everything at the airport. Not true at JFK's Terminal 5 because JetBlue still hasn't opened their JetBlue lounge, and I'm probably never going to be able to set foot in there because of the terribleness that is the JetBlue Premier card. But have added a thing to my arsenal that can make my travel day a little bit better. Pre-check global entry. I never would have thought to pay for that before credit cards. So there are aspects of my travel that have evolved because of credit cards and the benefits that you get from credit cards. Do I still travel the same way? I try to. There are definitely aspects of things that have changed where I am willing to do the newer thing because the newer thing is better. The newer thing is easier. And, I'll rack up more points by, doing a ride share versus booking a rental car. Or I don't necessarily want to use a rental car in an area that I'm not super familiar with that I'm only going to be in for 2 or 3 days. I can just ride share everywhere. Those aspects of things have definitely evolved, but I will still try to book as best value as I can overall. How that value translates for me is not going to be how that value translates for you, but that is the beauty of the points and miles game. Thank you very much, all. We're going to move over to our news roundup and topics. News, I mentioned last week that there was going to be U.S. bank news. There was rumors. We're going to punt on that a little bit further. I want to see more out of the altitude reserve changes. They have become official, but we're going to wait for more announcements there. With that, do we have any final thoughts for this week? Craig, any final thoughts?
Relax, touch some grass, have a good time, use the points.
Stop thinking about your top 8. Lonnie, any final thoughts there?
Oh, I guess the title's going to be Touch Some Grass, RJ.
I mean, I was going to go with private special OnlyFans Discord, but I suppose I can do Touch Some Grass.
No, yeah.
Yeah, is up there as well to me. Hoping I could land that plane, but I'm not City. RJ, any final thoughts?
I think that credit cards with annual fees should come with a small little patch of grass that you are legally required to press your face into at least once a week. Like, you must actually go and touch that patch of grass, because I think we've all lost our minds.
Who pays for the upkeep of that grass?
It's part of the annual fee. A tiny little chipmunk comes with a tiny little lawnmower and mows the grass for you.
It would probably make more sense if it was AstroTurf.
Hey, Matt,
You
Yes.
ever got turf burn?
Fair. I was thinking more. Anyway, before I dive too far down that hole, next turf, folks. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. We are going to be taking the last few moments of the show to highlight our Diamond and new members. This week, as always, is brought to you by our Diamond members, Rex Bleen, Rupert Pond, Double Animal Fries, AP, Keith, and Mitch528. Thank you for your continued support. We have a ton of new silver members, those being Clinton Woodward, Stacy Travel Points, GB, Tom Morrison, Ramon Olivero, Wilfredo Gomez, Shadowfrost, Tariq Berkes, Chris, Anthony Venture, DS, Justine Lynch, Alexander J. Black, Zach Kinsey, JP Grace, David Gomez, Jeremy Leslie, David P., Tariq Gaines, that guy, and Donut3722. Thank you so much all for becoming members, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention throughout all of this. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back next week.